Ryan stepped off the train and onto the cobblestone platform of a small, picturesque town surrounded by rolling hills. The air smelled fresh, carrying the faint aroma of blooming flowers and freshly baked bread. This place was like something out of a storybook, and Ryan couldn't wait to explore. His backpack bounced on his shoulders as he adjusted his camera, ready to document every corner for his travel vlog. The town was famous for its historic architecture, grand clock tower, and ceremonial guards who patrolled the square on horseback. Tourists from around the world came to admire the guards' discipline and the majestic horses they rode. Ryan had seen pictures online, but being here in person felt surreal. The town square was lively with visitors, local vendors selling souvenirs, and musicians playing soft tunes in the background. Ryan, however, wasn't your average tourist. At 24, he was a self-proclaimed adventurer who prided himself on doing things differently. For Ryan, the goal wasn't just to enjoy a place, but to make it unforgettable, often by pulling stunts that caught attention online. He smiled at the thought of the likes and comments his next post would bring. As he wandered into the heart of the square, Ryan spotted them. Two ceremonial guards in dazzling uniforms sitting tall on their majestic horses. The horses were magnificent creatures, their glossy coats shining in the sunlight. The guards sat perfectly still, their expressions serious and focused, as though they were carved from stone. Tourists snapped pictures from a distance, careful not to disturb the quiet elegance of the scene. Ryan, however, wasn't content with just a picture. He wanted something more exciting, something that would make his followers gasp. He stood there for a moment, observing the guard closest to him. The man had a calm, almost regal presence, and his horse stood still, exuding both power and grace. A mischievous idea began forming in Ryan's mind. "This is it," he thought. "This is how I'll make my mark in this town." He imagined himself capturing a moment that would go viral, a funny interaction with the guard or even the horse. Surely, people would laugh at the daring tourist who brought humor to this otherwise formal scene. But for now, Ryan kept his distance, pulling out his camera to record the guards as he planned his next move. He noticed a small fountain nearby, the water sparkling as it danced under the sun. An idea started to take root in his mind, but he brushed it aside for the moment, deciding to explore the square a bit more before making his move. As he strolled around, snapping pictures of the colorful market stalls and the towering clock tower, Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. The day was just beginning, and he was determined to leave his mark on this historic town, one way or another. Unbeknownst to Ryan, the lesson he was about to learn would be one he would never forget. Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the guards and their horses. He had already taken a few pictures and videos from a distance, but something still felt missing. "I need a shot that will get everyone's attention," he thought. He wanted something daring, something that would make his followers on social media stop scrolling and pay attention. As he walked around the square, his eyes kept returning to the two guards. They were still standing tall, as still as statues, but Ryan noticed something else. There was a small fountain near where the guards stood, with clear water splashing gently into a stone basin. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and an idea popped into his head. This could be it, Ryan muttered under his breath. He pulled out his water bottle and quickly filled it from the fountain. He could already picture the scene in his mind. He'd splash the water at the horse, and the reaction would be priceless. The horse would jump in surprise, and the guard would likely have to do something dramatic. It would be funny, and everyone would laugh. Ryan took a few more steps, carefully watching the guard, who was still standing, unmoving. The horse seemed calm, its eyes half closed in the sun, looking like it could stand there for hours without a care in the world. But Ryan was certain that if he startled the horse, it would create the reaction he was hoping for. He crept closer, making sure the guard wasn't paying attention. When he was just a few feet away, Ryan raised his water bottle and aimed it directly at the horse. With a quick flick of his wrist, he splashed the water right onto the horse's side. The water hit with a soft splash, but the reaction was immediate. The horse's ears shot up, its eyes wide with surprise. It stomped its hooves and shifted its weight nervously. The guard, who had been so calm moments before, suddenly tensed up, his eyes narrowing as he turned sharply to face Ryan. For a moment, everything went still. Ryan stood there, his heart racing. He expected the horse to do something dramatic, maybe rear up or run, but the animal remained mostly calm, even though it was clearly startled. The guard, however, did not stay calm for long. With an expression of absolute seriousness, the guard dismounted his horse with swift, practiced movements. He stood tall, looking down at Ryan with eyes full of authority. "You there, what do you think you're doing?" His voice was low, but powerful, sending a chill down Ryan's spine. Ryan, caught off guard, laughed nervously. I didn't mean to. Just a little joke, you know," he said, trying to brush it off with a smile. He raised his phone, hoping to play it off as just another prank for his social media. But the guard wasn't amused. The people around the square had started to take notice, and the atmosphere shifted. The mood went from lighthearted to tense as Ryan realized that his prank was not going to be received the way he had hoped. Instead of laughs, he could sense the disappointment in the air. The guard stood, unmoving, waiting for Ryan to understand the gravity of what he had just done. Ryan's smile slowly faded, and he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't the fun moment he had planned. Instead, it was about to turn into a lesson he wasn't prepared for. The guard's piercing gaze locked onto Ryan, and for the first time, Ryan felt the weight of his actions. The laughter that had been bubbling inside him died away, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. The square, once filled with chatter and movement, now seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Ryan had never been the kind of person to back down easily, but in that moment, he realized that this wasn't a situation he could talk his way out of. He had done something wrong, something that wasn't funny to anyone else. The guard stood perfectly still, his hands resting on his belt, his posture as rigid as the stone statues around the square. There was a quiet power in his presence, an authority that Ryan had completely underestimated. "Do you know who you just splashed, young man?" the guard asked, his voice calm but firm. It was not a question to be answered lightly, but more of a statement that demanded respect. Ryan hesitated. He had no idea who the guard was, but something told him that this wasn't just any ordinary soldier. The guard's uniform was pristine, his horse was magnificent, and the way he carried himself showed years of training and discipline. Ryan now understood that what he had done wasn't just an annoying prank. It was a deep disrespect toward something sacred in this town. I didn't mean anything by it," Ryan stammered, his usual confidence faltering under the weight of the guard's stare. "I thought it would just be funny. I wasn't thinking." The guard's expression didn't soften. He didn't laugh or show any signs of amusement. Instead, he calmly stepped forward, still keeping his distance from Ryan, and gave a sharp whistle. Moments later, another officer appeared, a woman who seemed equally as disciplined and composed. She, too, was dressed in the ceremonial uniform, and she instantly assessed the situation. The look in her eyes told Ryan that this wasn't just an accident. It was a violation of something the town held dear. Without a word, the guard turned his back on Ryan and led his horse a few steps away. The woman followed, keeping a careful eye on the young tourist. Ryan felt an overwhelming sense of embarrassment. The square was still quiet, and the eyes of every onlooker were now on him. He felt small, foolish, and completely out of place. The woman spoke to the guard in low tones for a moment, and then she turned back to Ryan. "Come with us," she said, her voice not unkind, but firm. Ryan wanted to protest, to laugh it off and tell them it was just a joke. But the look on the woman's face told him there would be no more jokes. There was no escaping the situation now. He had disrespected something important, and the consequences were starting to unfold. "Come with us," she repeated, "and you'll learn why this isn't something you should take lightly." Ryan gulped, his heart pounding in his chest. He followed her reluctantly, feeling the eyes of the crowd on him, as he began to realize that this would be a day he would never forget. Ryan was led away from the square by the woman guard, his feet dragging with every step. His mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. He couldn't believe he had messed up so badly. What had started as a harmless joke was quickly spiraling into something far bigger than he ever imagined. As they walked down a narrow street lined with charming old buildings, Ryan noticed the curious stares from the locals. They were talking quietly amongst themselves, their faces full of disapproval. The laughter and cheer from earlier in the day were gone, replaced by a quiet tension that hung in the air. Ryan felt his stomach twist. He had been in other places before where people didn't seem to care much about his behavior, but this town was different. The people here seemed to hold on to their traditions and their respect for one another like it was something sacred. He had, in a way, broken their trust, and he could see that it upset them. When they arrived at a small community building, the woman guard pushed open the door and gestured for him to enter. Inside, a small group of town leaders were gathered around a large wooden table, their faces serious. The mayor, an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes, was sitting at the head of the table. The woman guard spoke to him in a low voice, explaining what had happened in the square. Ryan could hear the disappointment in her voice, and it made him feel even worse. The mayor didn't say anything at first, but Ryan could tell he was taking his time, choosing his words carefully. "Do you know why people here hold the guards and their horses in such high regard?" the mayor finally asked, his voice steady but firm. Ryan swallowed hard. He had no idea. He had thought it was just some ceremony, a cool thing to see while on vacation. But clearly there was much more to it than that. "The guards are a symbol of our town's history," the mayor continued. "They represent discipline, respect, and honor. The horses are not just animals. They are part of that history. We train them with great care and respect. They stand as protectors of our heritage, and they deserve the same respect in return." Ryan nodded slowly, understanding a bit more, but still feeling unsure of how he could make things right. He had never thought of it this way. To him, it had only been a funny idea, a quick splash of water to get a laugh. But now he realized that his actions had been disrespectful to something deeply meaningful to these people. The mayor's eyes softened slightly as he watched Ryan's face. "We don't take disrespect lightly here," he said. "But we also believe in second chances. You will learn the value of what you did, and hopefully come to understand the significance of the guards and their horses." Ryan's heart sank. He had a feeling that the second chance wouldn't be easy. The group turned to discuss his fate, and Ryan sat quietly, reflecting on what the mayor had said. He had underestimated this town, its people, and their values. He had come here expecting to just be a tourist. But now he was learning a lesson in respect, something he would never forget. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the buildings. Ryan knew that this day would be one of those memories that stuck with him forever, whether he liked it or not. Ryan sat quietly in the small, quiet room, waiting for the mayor and the town leaders to finish their discussion. The minutes felt like hours, each one stretching longer than the last. His mind was racing with thoughts of how to get out of the situation. He had hoped they would just let him off with a warning, but the serious expressions on everyone's faces told him that wasn't going to happen. Finally, the mayor stood up, his hands resting on the edge of the table. "Young man," he began, looking directly at Ryan, "what you did was not a simple mistake. It was an insult to our town's traditions, and it cannot be ignored." Ryan felt his stomach drop. The mayor's tone wasn't angry, but it was firm, as if he had made up his mind. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, wishing he could take everything back. If only he had thought for a moment before splashing the water, he wouldn't be in this mess. He had never intended to hurt anyone. He had just wanted to make a funny video. But now he was beginning to understand that his actions had consequences, and those consequences were more serious than he had realized. The mayor paused for a moment, and then he spoke again. However, we believe in giving people a chance to make amends. We don't want you to leave here with nothing but shame. Ryan looked up, surprised by this. He had expected a fine, or even worse, being banned from the town. But this was different. The mayor wasn't going to just punish him. Instead, they were going to teach him a lesson, one he would never forget. You will spend the day with the guards tomorrow, the mayor continued. You'll help care for the horses, learn their training, and understand what they mean to our people. It is important that you not only understand what you did wrong, but that you understand the value of what you disrespected. Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but before he could say anything, the mayor raised a hand, silencing him. This will be a humbling experience for you, he said, but we believe that by the end of the day, you will gain a new perspective on our traditions. Ryan nodded slowly. It wasn't what he had expected, but he knew there was no way around it. He had to do this. The thought of spending an entire day with the horses and learning their training felt a bit overwhelming, but Ryan knew it was the right thing to do. He was going to have to face the consequences of his actions, and maybe, just maybe, he would come to understand why this town held its traditions in such high regard. The town leaders stood up and walked out of the room, leaving Ryan alone with the mayor for a few moments. The mayor looked at him kindly, as if to say that Ryan had been given a fair chance. Ryan sighed deeply. The day had started off with so much excitement, but now it was clear that it was going to end with a lesson in respect, a lesson he wasn't likely to forget anytime soon. As he left the room and stepped back into the town square, Ryan could feel the weight of the day on his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would learn what it truly meant to honor tradition. Ryan sat quietly in the small, quiet room, waiting for the mayor and the town leaders to finish their discussion. The minutes felt like hours, each one stretching longer than the last. His mind was racing with thoughts of how to get out of the situation. He had hoped they would just let him off with a warning, but the serious expressions on everyone's faces told him that wasn't going to happen. Finally, the mayor stood up, his hands resting on the edge of the table. "Young man," he began, looking directly at Ryan, "what you did was not a simple mistake. It was an insult to our town's traditions, and it cannot be ignored." Ryan felt his stomach drop. The mayor's tone wasn't angry, but it was firm, as if he had made up his mind. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, wishing he could take everything back. If only he had thought for a moment before splashing the water, he wouldn't be in this mess. He had never intended to hurt anyone. He had just wanted to make a funny video. But now he was beginning to understand that his actions had consequences, and those consequences were more serious than he had realized. The mayor paused for a moment, and then he spoke again. "However, we believe in giving people a chance to make amends. We don't want you to leave here with nothing but shame." Ryan looked up, surprised by this. He had expected a fine, or even worse, being banned from the town. But this was different. The mayor wasn't going to just punish him. Instead, they were going to teach him a lesson, one he would never forget. "You will spend the day with the guards tomorrow," the mayor continued. "You'll help care for the horses, learn their training, and understand what they mean to our people. It is important that you not only understand what you did wrong, but that you understand the value of what you disrespected." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but before he could say anything, the mayor raised a hand, silencing him. "This will be a humbling experience for you," he said, "but we believe that by the end of the day, you will gain a new perspective on our traditions." Ryan nodded slowly. It wasn't what he had expected, but he knew there was no way around it. He had to do this. The thought of spending an entire day with the horses and learning their training felt a bit overwhelming, but Ryan knew it was the right thing to do. He was going to have to face the consequences of his actions, and maybe, just maybe, he would come to understand why this town held its traditions in such high regard. The town leaders stood up and walked out of the room, leaving Ryan alone with the mayor for a few moments. The mayor looked at him kindly, as if to say that Ryan had been given a fair chance. Ryan sighed deeply. The day had started off with so much excitement, but now it was clear that it was going to end with a lesson in respect, a lesson he wasn't likely to forget anytime soon. As he left the room and stepped back into the town square, Ryan could feel the weight of the day on his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would learn what it truly meant to honor tradition. The sun was just rising when Ryan arrived at the stable the next morning. The quiet of the early hours surrounded him, and the town was still half asleep, with only a few people stirring in the streets. Ryan was tired, but knew he had to follow through. The events from the day before still felt fresh in his mind, and he couldn't help but feel nervous about what was ahead. He walked toward the stable, where two guards stood, waiting for him. They were dressed in their formal uniforms, and their horses stood beside them, calm and patient. The horses looked just as majestic as they had the day before, and Ryan couldn't help but feel a little in awe of them. The woman guard, who had led him to the mayor the previous day, stepped forward with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Ryan," she said. "I know you're here to learn, and we're going to help you understand the bond we share with these horses." Ryan nodded, unsure of what to say. He had never spent much time around horses, let alone ceremonial ones like these. The guard's seriousness the day before had made him realize that he had underestimated the significance of the horses. Now, as he stood before them, he understood that there was more to this than just looking at them from a distance. The woman guard motioned for Ryan to follow her, and they entered the stable together. The air inside was warm and smelled of hay and leather. The horses stood quietly in their stalls, some munching on hay, others resting their heads. Ryan felt a sense of calm in the stable, as if time moved differently here. "First, you'll learn how to care for them," she said. "These horses are trained with great patience. They're not just animals. They're our partners, and they deserve respect." Ryan watched as she gently patted one of the horses, who nudged her affectionately. It was clear that they had a deep bond, one built on trust and years of training. Ryan was amazed at how gentle and calm the horses were despite their size and strength. "Your job today is simple," the woman continued. "You'll start by grooming the horses, brush them gently, clean their hooves, and feed them. They are powerful animals, but they trust us to take care of them." Ryan was given a brush and a small rake to clean the hooves. He moved slowly, watching the guards carefully to make sure he did it right. At first, he felt awkward, unsure of how to handle the animals. But as he worked, he started to feel more comfortable. The horses were calm, and their large eyes seemed to watch him with curiosity. As he brushed one of the horse's coats, he could feel the strength in its muscles beneath the soft fur. The horse's mane was thick and shiny, and Ryan marveled at the care it must have taken to keep them looking so perfect. Throughout the morning, Ryan learned more about the training process. The guards explained how the horses were taught to stay calm in stressful situations, how they were trained for the ceremonial duties they performed each day. He learned that it wasn't just about being on the horse. It was about understanding the animal, building a relationship with it. By the end of the day, Ryan's hands were sore from brushing and cleaning, but his mind was filled with new respect. He had never fully understood the bond between humans and animals until now. He could see that it was not something to be taken lightly. The horses weren't just symbols. They were partners in the guard's work, and they were treated with care and dignity. As Ryan finished his last task for the day, he stood back and looked at the horses, his heart full of gratitude. He had come to this town expecting a quick, fun adventure, but he was leaving with a deep lesson in respect. Tomorrow, he would have to face the townspeople again, but now he felt ready to do so. He had learned a lesson well, and it was one he would carry with him forever. The day had come for Ryan to face the people of the town again. He woke up early, feeling the weight of the previous day's lessons pressing on his mind. It had been a long, humbling day with the horses, but it had opened his eyes to so much more than he had expected. He now understood the value of the guards, the horses, and the traditions that the people of this town held dear. Ryan stood at the edge of the town square, feeling the cool breeze against his face. The sun had just risen, casting a soft golden light over the square. The people were gathering, their voices soft as they exchanged greetings. Ryan could feel their eyes on him as they noticed his presence. The mayor stood nearby, and Ryan walked toward him slowly, his heart beating faster with each step. He knew what he had to do, but it wasn't going to be easy. He had to apologize, not just to the guards and the horses, but to the entire town. It was the only way he could make things right. "Are you ready?" the mayor asked when Ryan reached him. The mayor's expression was kind but serious, and Ryan could tell that he was giving him the chance to prove that he had learned something. Ryan took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. He had come to realize that an apology wasn't just about saying sorry. It was about showing that he truly understood what he had done wrong. The mayor gave him a small nod and stepped aside, motioning for Ryan to walk into the center of the square. The crowd parted to make room for him, their eyes still watching with curiosity. Some faces were warm, others were skeptical. But Ryan didn't let that discourage him. This was his chance to make amends. Ryan stood tall, his heart pounding in his chest. He cleared his throat and spoke to the crowd, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "I want to apologize to all of you," he began. "I made a terrible mistake yesterday. I didn't understand how much the guards and their horses mean to this town and to all of you. I thought I was just having some fun, but I see now that I disrespected something important, something that you all hold dear." He paused for a moment, trying to find the right words. The crowd was silent, waiting for him to continue. "I spent the day with the horses and the guards, and I've learned so much about the care, the trust, and the hard work that goes into everything you do. I am truly sorry for my actions, and I hope that you can forgive me for my thoughtlessness." Ryan took another deep breath, feeling a sense of peace begin to settle over him. This was hard, but he knew it was the right thing to do. "I've learned a lot from this experience," he continued, "and I promise to leave here with a new understanding of respect. For your traditions, for your animals, and for all of you." When he finished, there was a long pause. Ryan couldn't tell if the people would accept his apology, but he stood there, waiting. Slowly, the mayor stepped forward and placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Thank you for your words," the mayor said. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and you've shown that today. We appreciate your sincerity." A few people in the crowd nodded, and Ryan could see the tension begin to ease. The woman guard, who had been with him the day before, gave him a small smile. Ryan returned the smile, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. As the crowd began to disperse, Ryan felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had learned a valuable lesson, and he knew that this experience would change the way he approached the world. He had come to this town thinking it would be just another stop on his journey, but it had turned into something much more meaningful. Ryan left the town with a newfound respect for its people and their traditions, carrying with him the lesson of humility and the importance of understanding others' values. It was a lesson he would never forget. The day had finally come for Ryan to leave the small historic town. He had spent several days here, and each one had taught him something new. As he packed his bag, he looked around the room with a feeling of gratitude. The lessons he had learned about respect, tradition, and humility had changed him in ways he hadn't expected. Ryan had entered this town full of excitement and confidence, thinking he could easily blend in with the local culture. He never imagined that his actions would have consequences, and he certainly didn't expect to learn so much about the importance of the town's traditions. The guards, the horses, and the people all held something sacred, and he had come to realize how much that meant to them. His time spent with the horses had opened his eyes in ways that would stay with him forever. He had never imagined how much care and training went into the relationship between the guards and their horses. He had learned to respect the animals, understanding that they weren't just beautiful creatures. They were partners in an important part of the town's history. The bond between the guards and their horses was built on trust, hard work, and deep respect. As Ryan made his way through the town one last time, he couldn't help but notice the difference in how he viewed it now. The streets, the buildings, the people, it all felt more meaningful to him. He had walked through the square a few days ago, oblivious to the significance of the guards and their horses, but now he saw them with new eyes. He walked past the stables where the horses were kept, and he saw the woman guard standing nearby, watching the horses graze peacefully. She smiled and nodded at him, a silent acknowledgement of the journey he had been on. Ryan returned the smile, feeling a sense of appreciation for everything she had shown him. It wasn't just the horses or the guards that had taught him something. It was the people of the town, their patience, and their willingness to offer him a chance to make things right. The mayor had given him an opportunity to prove that he could learn from his mistakes, and Ryan had done his best to honor that chance. He knew he had made a fool of himself when he first arrived, but now he was leaving with a deeper understanding of what it meant to respect others and their traditions. As Ryan reached the train station, he paused for a moment before getting on the train. The town was behind him now, but the lessons he had learned would stay with him forever. He realized that he would carry these lessons into every new place he visited, remembering to approach each new experience with respect and an open mind. The train pulled away from the station, and Ryan looked out the window as the town slowly faded from view. He felt a sense of peace inside him. He had come here expecting a quick adventure, but what he had gained was far more valuable. He had learned that every place has its own story, and every person has their own way of life. It was up to him to understand and appreciate it. Ryan smiled to himself as the train picked up speed. This wasn't just another adventure. It was a life lesson. A lesson in humility, respect, and the power of learning from one's mistakes. And as he looked out over the passing landscape, Ryan knew that this experience would stay with him for a lifetime.